Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. If you wait until a full sentence is ready in your head before speaking English, you will always feel slower than the people around you. Not because your English is weak, not because your grammar is bad, and not because you lack confidence, but because real conversations do not give you the time to prepare perfect sentences. And this simple misunderstanding changes everything. Why speaking in full sentences is holding you back. From the moment you started learning English, you were trained to believe that speaking is the final step of thinking. First, you think clearly in your own language. Then you translate that thought into English. Then you arrange the grammar carefully. Then you check whether the tense is correct. Then you check whether the sentence sounds polite, formal, or natural enough. And only after all of this internal work feels complete do you finally allow yourself to speak. This process feels responsible and intelligent because it is the same process rewarded in schools, exams, and written tests. But real conversations are not designed for this kind of thinking. A real conversation does not pause while you prepare. It continues. It moves forward even when ideas are incomplete. It responds to emotion, not to structure. And when you bring a slow, exam-style thinking process into a fast, living conversation, your brain immediately falls behind. While you are still constructing a complete and correct sentence inside your head, the moment to enter the conversation quietly disappears. Someone else speaks. Someone reacts. Someone changes the topic. And when you finally speak, you are no longer entering naturally. You are interrupting late. That lateness is what creates discomfort. This is an important distinction. You are not uncomfortable because your English is wrong. You are uncomfortable because you missed the natural entry point. When the entry point is missed, silence becomes visible. And visible silence creates pressure. That pressure does something subtle to your brain. It shifts your attention away from communication and towards self-monitoring. Instead of thinking about what you want to say, you start thinking about how you will sound. Instead of expressing an idea, you start evaluating yourself. And the moment self-evaluation begins, fluency collapses. Most learners describe this moment as lack of confidence. But confidence is not the real problem. The real problem is that your brain is now trying to protect you from social exposure. Because speaking late feels risky. When people are already listening, any mistake feels bigger. So your brain slows you down even more. Not to help you speak better, but to help you avoid embarrassment. This is why the habit of speaking only in full sentences is dangerous. Full sentences demand completion before action. They force your brain to delay sound until everything feels safe. And that delay pushes you out of the natural rhythm of conversation. Once you are out of rhythm, every sentence feels heavy. Every word feels important. Every pause feels noticeable. And English stops feeling like a tool you use. It starts feeling like a performance you must survive. This is not because you lack ability. It is because you were trained to treat speaking as a finished product instead of a moving process. And until this training is questioned, no amount of vocabulary or grammar will make speaking feel natural. This is the real reason your English feels blocked. Not because you don't know what to say, but because you are waiting too long to begin. What happens before fluency begins? Most people think fluency begins with words. It doesn't. Fluency begins before words, before meaning, before grammar, before structure. It begins at the moment your brain decides that it is safe to make sound. Fluent speakers do not wait until they know exactly what they are going to say. They wait until they feel permission to enter the conversation. That permission does not come from vocabulary or grammar. It comes from timing. In real conversations, there is always a small window where sound can enter naturally. This window is subtle. It appears when someone finishes a thought, when there is a small pause, when attention shifts. Fluent speakers sense this window intuitively. They don't analyze it. They respond to it. Learners, on the other hand, are not listening for this window. They are listening to their own thoughts. They are waiting for certainty. And by the time certainty arrives, the window has closed. This is why fluent speakers often start speaking with something that sounds incomplete. Not because they don't know what to say, but because they understand that entering early matters more than entering perfectly. Before a clear sentence forms, fluent speakers often produce small, low-pressure sounds. These sounds do not carry meaning. They carry presence. They tell the listener, I'm here. I'm responding. I'm part of this moment. Once that presence is established, meaning can unfold naturally. This is a critical difference. Learners try to deliver meaning first and presence later. Fluent speakers establish presence first and allow meaning to arrive gradually. Presence reduces pressure. Pressure slows thinking. So when presence comes first, thinking speeds up. Another important detail most learners never notice is this. When fluent speakers hesitate, they hesitate inside speech, not before it. They stretch sounds. They repeat words. They change direction mid-sentence. And because sound never stops, attention never sharpens. The listener stays relaxed. Silence before speech signals uncertainty. Sound during speech signals thoughtfulness. This is why fluent speakers can hesitate without sounding nervous. They never leave the conversation empty. Learners are taught to fear incomplete speech, so they choose silence instead. But silence is the most dangerous choice in conversation. Silence gives fear time to grow. Silence makes people wait. Silence turns speaking into an event. This is where your habit of full sentences quietly damages fluency. Full sentences force you to stay silent until everything feels resolved. And resolution takes time. Conversation does not offer that time. Once you understand that fluency begins with permission to start, not permission to be correct, your relationship with English changes. Speaking stops feeling like a jump. It starts feeling like a step. How waiting creates fear, and why your brain freezes. When you train yourself to speak only after a full sentence is ready, you unknowingly teach your brain that speaking is a high-risk activity. Every time you wait, your brain learns a pattern. It learns that silence comes first, then preparation, then exposure. And exposure always feels dangerous. The longer the silence lasts, the more your brain believes that something important is about to happen. This is not an English problem. This is a survival response. Human brains are wired to notice attention. When attention increases, the brain activates protection. This is why long pauses before speaking feel uncomfortable. It is not because you forgot English. It is because your brain senses that people are watching and waiting. And waiting feels like judgment. Once your brain detects judgment, it switches modes. It stops supporting expression. It starts monitoring behavior. You stop thinking freely. You start evaluating every word before it leaves your mouth. And evaluation kills flow. This is the moment learners describe as my mind went blank. But the mind is not blank. It is overloaded. It is busy protecting you. By demanding full sentences before speaking, you force your brain into this protective mode again and again. Over time, your brain associates English with exposure. Exposure with risk. Risk with fear. This is how anxiety slowly develops, even in learners who know English well. Breaking this pattern does not require bravery. It requires earlier entry. Earlier entry shortens silence. Shorter silence reduces attention. Reduced attention lowers fear. When you start speaking earlier, even without clarity, your brain receives a new message. Speaking does not equal danger. And when danger disappears, fluency begins to return. This is why forcing confidence never works. Confidence cannot exist while fear is active. Fear disappears only when the brain feels safe during action. Not before it, during it. This is also why practicing alone rarely fixes the problem. Alone, there is no social attention, no waiting eyes, no risk. Your brain never learns safety. Real progress happens when you allow yourself to begin speaking before you feel ready. That discomfort is not failure. It is retraining. Why this one change transforms fluency and confidence. When you stop waiting for full sentences, the first thing that changes is not your English. It is your relationship with silence. Silence stops controlling you. Earlier, silence felt necessary. You believed you needed silence to think, to prepare, to protect yourself from mistakes. But that silence was never neutral. It was creating pressure. It was sharpening attention. And it was teaching your brain that speaking is something dangerous that must be delayed. When you begin speaking earlier, silence shortens. And when silence shortens, attention softens. People stop waiting. They start listening naturally. Your brain senses this shift immediately. This is why confidence begins to appear. Not because you suddenly believe in yourself, but because your brain no longer feels exposed. Confidence is not a feeling you create. It is a state your brain enters when risk disappears. Another change happens quietly. Your thinking speed increases. Not because you became smarter, but because thinking works better during movement than during pressure. When sound is present, the brain stays engaged. When silence stretches, the brain freezes. This is also why people with imperfect English often sound confident. They don't wait. They don't over-prepare. They enter early, adjust openly, and stay present. Presence feels confident even when grammar is not perfect. Over time, your brain rewires its expectations. Speaking no longer feels like exposure. It feels like participation, and participation is safe. This single shift also changes how others perceive you. People don't judge grammar as much as learners believe. They respond to rhythm, presence, and ease. When you enter naturally, listeners relax, and relaxed listeners judge less. Let this idea settle. Fluency is not about saying the right sentence. Fluency is about refusing to stay silent while searching for the right sentence. Once you stop waiting, English stops feeling heavy. It starts feeling human. If this made you see English differently, stay here. Subscribe our channel and like the video. This channel is not about perfect English. It's about English that moves, flows, and works in real life. And if you keep watching, you'll learn how to speak without waiting for permission. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.